Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to be getting into spoilers for Wonder Woman. So, if you haven't seen the movie or if you want to avoid spoilers, maybe just bookmark this video and come back to it later. I'm going to get into all the spoilers, like every last little, as many details as I can remember, basically. So I'm basically probably going to end up telling you the whole movie as I talk about it. So you might want to come back or if you're like me, you don't care about being spoiled, stick around. We'll talk. So here we go. You've been warned. Starting now. All right. So the movie starts off in Themyscira. It starts off when Diana's probably about, I would say she's probably about 8 years old. But it starts off with her like watching the other Amazons train. She's like kind of mimicking the moves and stuff like that. It's actually kind of cute for a kid to be doing that. Um, and so it shows her just kind of then running around the island and talking to her mother Hippolyta about the wars and asking her to tell her stories and stuff like that. And so her mother sits her down at bedtime, just basically tells her a bedtime story. And in that, she explains basically to the audience that about how the gods were all defeated by Ares, basically, except for Zeus. I think in Zeus's last like dying act was to strike. I think he struck. I think this is how it goes. He struck at Ares, but he didn't kill him. So Ares is still around. But also, he gave the Amazons a weapon called the God Killer to defend themselves against Ares. And you're led to believe in the beginning of this beginning section of the movie that it's a sword called the God Killer sword, and it's actually not. It comes up later in the movie that it's actually Wonder Woman is the God Killer. She herself is the God Killer, and it's something of a secret that the other Amazons and specifically her mother keep from her while she's growing up. So I think it's an interesting thing. It kind of like it worked on me. Like it was a good twist, meaning like I definitely fell for it. There's a few twists in here that I actually fell for, and I was actually happy because it actually worked pretty well. Um, these twists because I thought I had stuff figured out and I clearly didn't. So, and I didn't really pay attention to any leaks with this movie or anything like that. So, kind of keeping that in mind, like I was kind of like thrown off by a couple things in this movie. So that was one of them. Because later on, I'm kind of skipping ahead, but later on in the fight with Ares, she goes to go for the blow, like she thinks he's gonna kill. He just sticks his hand up, and the sword just disintegrates at that point in time in his hand. It's actually a really cool scene, like because this, it looks like his hand's gonna go in, his sword's gonna go to his hand. It just gets cut down. It's a really cool scene, and it's actually a pretty, it's a pretty cool piece of action in CGI. It looks really good. But from there, she goes on. We're going back to Themyscira now. Basically, from there, it shows her being a teenager, and Antiope, who's basically her aunt, Hippolyta's sister, starts to train her from when she's actually little. And they show her training her when she's a little girl, and then they kind of skip ahead to when she's a teenager, showing her and training her. And like the other Amazons kind of walk up on horses, and they kind of, and Hippolyta sees it, and she's not pleased by what it is. And Antiope kind of says like, "Look, we know Ares is still alive. He's out there somewhere, and you know what she basically says. You know what she is, and kind of like she's our only hope." And they kind of like are she basically saying she should be prepared. And so they kind of dip in kind of allusions to what that she's not normal. That Diana's not normal like the normal Amazon. So they kind of put in um, little dibs and dabs of that part of that kind of thing where she's the God Killer. I thought it was more because she was made by Zeus out of clay that she was special and the other Amazons weren't. So maybe this is where I was kind of thrown by it. Also, in regards to her origin, they do something a little different. Usually in the comics, they have her after Steve Trevor lands, which he does here. After Steve Trevor lands, they have to decide like who's going to take him back. And in the comics, normally they have a fight, and Wonder Woman kind of disguises her identity with a mask or something of that nature, and she basically wins the right to take Steve Trevor back to man's world. This is different. She kind of does it on the down low. She decides for herself like I'm going to take you back, and we're going to stop Ares, and we're gonna stop this war that you're telling us about. And it's actually really, it's good. I think it's definitely, I think it's a better way to do it than the comics because it shows she has more volition to do stuff, and she has more compassion. She's not. You can tell when Steve Trevor's talking about the war when they bring her in that scene you can see online when they bring him in, and put the lasso of truth on him. That like she's kind of visibly shaken by the story he's telling about this war, and she wants to do something about it. And she even says in one of the conversations like, "So we're just gonna send him back? Like we're not gonna come help? Like we were intended." And Hippolyta is like, "No, we're not gonna help them. Like this is their kind of war, so the hell with them." And she doesn't like that at all. And like this part of her personality keeps on coming up in the movie, which is great. And it comes up in a funny way later on, which I'll tell you about, which is kind of part of the humor about it, is because she's so idealistic and kind of one-minded when she gets to man's world. It's hilarious how she deals with people, and she does not care about rank or anything. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And so there's that change to the origin, which I think is great. Again, I think it's a great change. They should probably do it in the comics because it works a lot better, than. I mean, the other stuff is good. I'm not taking a dump on it saying it's bad. It's just like I like this better because she has more of a choice, like about going to help. So basically, and then Steve Trevor comes, he crashes, and like what's cool is that like he's a spy basically for British intelligence, and he was spying on this plant, where Dr. Poison is, and she's making this new like super poison, but she hasn't figured it out yet. And so he goes in there and he steals her notebook. He sticks his hand into the glass, steals her notebook, and she sees him like walking out, and she realizes that the notebook's gone. She sees Steve Trevor, and she's like, "Hey, stop him!" And he just basically runs out, steals a plane, and like he puts a bomb into the plant, which is really cool because he takes a bomb out of the cockpit and he just kind of drops it, which I thought was really cool. And so then he goes flying the other way, and then he just kind of, I believe he gets hit by some sort of flak fire or something like that, and he crashes into Themyscira. But it's kind of the island itself is kind of shrouded by fog, so it's really cool like how they do it too. And then like when they show the Germans coming to get Steve Trevor, you see it in like the trailers, the guys fighting, which is this great fight. The Germans and the Amazons fighting each other. It's a really great fight. And you see Amazons die. They can die. They get shot. You see a few of them die from gunshots and stuff like that. And so it kind of puts in your mind that like she's not entirely unkillable. So it's a good thing to make you kind of, she's going to get killed. She's not unstoppable, which is good. Because it makes you concerned about Diana and her well-being. But so basically the Germans follow him in to the fog, and a great scene where the guy, like, he sticks his hand in to the fog and he can see like a tropical weather. Like he goes, like he sees the plane in the water. He goes, there he is, and he sticks his hand in to point it out, and like his hand is like they were in darkness and fog basically at night, and then all of a sudden his hand is like in a tropical sunlight. It's great, done very well. So that fight is great where the Germans come on the land, and then basically they have Steve Trevor come up to him, and like he tells them all the things you can see in the clip online. He tells them about what's going on, and that's where we're introduced to the lasso of truth, which is really good. And it's a really funny scene where he says it's hot. When he tries to lie, it gets hot and it burns him, which is actually a really cool thing. Another thing is like this is where you start to see the great chemistry between Chris Pine and Gal Gadot in this movie, which is like these two have the best chemistry in a comic book movie I've ever seen. Like this goes beyond anything that's ever been done. Some people are going to say like the Robert Downey Jr. Gwyneth Paltrow thing is better. I completely disagree. This doesn't feel forced at all, and it's like they have a very natural sort of rapport, and like the way they play off each other is really great. It's really awesome. So that kind of starts in like Steve Trevor's in this kind of healing pool, and they have like a little back and forth, which is really funny, and and it kind of goes on to the boat when they're on the boat to come to London, and they have a nice little back and forth there too. So like they take the time to build the relationship between these two that ends up being that they're in love with each other, which is the basically the story in the comics, just as they are in love with each other. So, and you don't feel like it's rushed, and it doesn't feel artificial or forced. You know what I mean? Like it can be in these movies, like, and actually in a lot of movies, not just comic book movies, like it can just be terrible in a lot of movies. Like in the Thor Jane Foster relationship in the Thor movies is terrible. Like you don't see it. You know what I mean? Like other than him being a very attractive guy, it's just like you don't see a very good on-screen chemistry between those two, and that's completely the opposite with this. They have a very good chemistry, and like they have a very good chemistry. That sounds terrible. They have very good chemistry. So, and it comes out, and like that's where a lot of the comedy comes from, is from Chris Pine and Gal Gadot, and like their interactions with each other. A lot of the comedy comes from that, and it's funny. It's generally funny, and it doesn't feel out of place, and it's great. So it's a good step in the right direction for the DC extended universe. Like I don't want it to get jokey and overly like almost you going into action comedy territory like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I think that can be a bit much, and they can feel forced, and like I know a lot of other fans of the DC extended universe kind of don't want that. They want the flavor to be different, so, which is good, because this has got humor, but it's different than anything Marvel's done, which I think is the most important thing, is that they're still differentiating themselves while getting humor into it. It's not like kind of with Suicide Squad, you kind of see like, post Deadpool and everything, like they were kind of like trying to be the edgy kind of funny thing, and it just didn't work because it wasn't part of the original script, because I really think their mandate was to be different and dark and gritty and stuff like that. But then it had to change because of Batman v Superman and, other stuff like that. So this is very well done humor. It's great. There's some really great little gags, if you want to call them. Like her trying on all of her dresses is funny. And her trying to walk out with her sword and her shield. You can see that clip online. It's hilarious. And then another thing that's hilarious is, so Steve Trevor, when they get to Man's World, they get Diana some new clothes, and a really funny part that I thought was, and this is the part where you're introduced to David Thewlis's character, and yeah, we'll get to that soon. But so basically, when Steve Trevor goes to take the Dr. Poison's notebook to the guys who are head of the military and the British military and everything like that. And he's like, look, these people are making like a super like hydrogen based, which I kind of don't get because I'm not a scientist, but a hydrogen based version of mustard gas. And it's like, well, we got to stop this. We got to do something and everything like that. And then like, and the guys were like, well, no, we don't want to ruin. They have an armistice set up, and we don't want to. This would ruin that if you went to go attack them and everything like that. So, and then like he goes in the spiel of like how many people are going to die like on the front, and soldiers, and like basically there's soldiers and civilians that are going to die, and the mass casualties. And this is where I talk about in my non-spoiler review, where they actually respect what happened in World War One and the mass number of death that was actually true. And then like, so this is kind of like using that and kind of, also like getting people to understand like how like awful the war was. And so basically they say, no, you're not going to do anything about this. We're just going to go try with the armistice and everything like that. And then Diana like has a fit. She calls this general a coward and all this stuff. Like, you'll just let these people die and blah, blah, blah. And then like after, they kind of, Steve Trevor kind of drags her out of the room. You can see the clip online. This is where This is where she's like, I can't believe you're going to let him you're just going to walk out. Like, what kind of person are you? And stuff like that. And he wraps the lasso of truth around his hand, around his wrist, and he says like I'm gonna take you to the front, and he's like, we're probably gonna die, and he gets all scared and concerned, like, we need a team. So stuff like that, like, it's just hilarious. And I'm not doing any justice here, like, you just need to see it for yourself, but it's stuff like that where it's really funny, and really it gives you an insight to the character, and like how almost very like childlike she is, almost like she definitely seems different, because they kind of bookend the movie with modern day stuff. She definitely seems a little more jaded in the beginning and the end of the movie, as far as like how she acts and stuff like that, and the bookending pieces, as opposed to Wonder Woman, where she's, in Wonder Woman, she's basically she kind of acts like a child, not in a bad way. She's very idealistic and doesn't understand like how the world works basically. So moving on from that, he gets his team together, which is I believe his name is Samir, and another guy named Charlie, who's like a sniper, but he's a drunk and he never can hit his target and anything like that. And then another guy called Chief, he's an American Indian who's over in World War One, and they kind of explain, why he's there very well. They say like look, he's like, my people lost everything, and I'm over here making money where I can. You know what I mean? So it was a good way to explain like why a Native American would be over there in World War One. So I thought it was, at least I thought it was good enough. So um, very good to include someone like that too. Like, and good diversity in the cast that's not forced. You know what I mean? It was very good. Um, so there's a lot of good humor between those characters, like the whole team, like Samir and Charlie and Chief and like Diana um and Steve. Like a lot of great humor between them. A lot of great jokes, and I say jokes, but they're not really jokes. They're just like they're these kind of situational, like kind of like situational comedy things that are really good and just great. Just great interactions between them, and just very heartening. And it's good to ease the tension off of like what could be a very dour movie, which is something that like the DC films universe has gotten a lot of flack for. Is that it can be very dour and very dark and depressing, which this is not that. Like there's a lot of great moments of humor and levity that give you kind of a reprieve from the kind of heavy, kind of dark stuff. So that's good. So basically, so they get to the front, basically. She's trying to get to the front. She's like, Diana keeps on saying, take me to the war. That's where I'll find Ares. I'll find Ares at the war. So Steve was just like, okay, I'm going to take you to the war. Just don't worry about it. So they finally get to the front and they get to no man's land. And he explains to her, she's like, kind of like, let's go. And he's like, no, you can't go. And he explains to her why they call it no man's land, how no man survives and stuff like that. And basically she's like, she's had it at this point. She's kind of like, whatever. Like, I'm going to go. Guys can come with me if you want, but I'm going to go. So this is where the good shot of her coming out of the trenches right there. And it's an amazing scene. Like, it's great. Basically the Germans throw everything they can at her, and they don't make a dent in her basically. And then it's a great, really kind of like victorious scene for the troops that are there, because they're finally getting over this hump. So they all come over out of the trenches and they start to go towards the city. It's called Veld, and it's a city that's been under occupation for a while and very depressed and everything. And so that's also the scene where she gets into the city, where she has the fight in the room where she's fighting the guys, and like she breaks the rifle behind her back and stuff like that. And that's actually one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen in a comic book movie. And it's something that, especially with a female hero, they kind of do the same, kind of moves that Scarlett Johansson does in all of her movies, where she does a little flip thing around the guy's neck and she ends up on top of him and he's knocked out for some reason. This is not that. The fights they do with her are way, way better. And they're very visceral, and they're very tough, and they're awesome. Like, she's using a sword and a shield. It's great. And she's kicking ass. Like, I put the scene in the warehouse with Wonder Woman up there with the warehouse scene in Batman v Superman as far as fights go. It's great. It's a great piece of work there. So they basically they liberate this town of Veld, and they have fun there. And this is where Diana and Steve kind of consummate their relationship basically. And it's done in a very touching way, and it's humorous and very nice, and it's not rushed at all. They take their time with it, but you don't feel like it's the movie's dragging ever, which is kind of great, because like there's a lot of good character moments, and you don't feel that the movie is dragging. So that's always a good thing. And then like it's something that I think the problem people have with Batman v Superman, and in particular, and I guess in some way Suicide Squad, is like any of the the character bits like seem to kind of drag the movie down, where it's like this, it doesn't do that at all. It's like they keep it it feels like it's a cracking pace, but it's because it's so humorous and so witty and so, it can be touching at times, which is why I think it works so well. Um, so basically, this is where she goes in to basically after this. Hold on, I'm collecting my thoughts here. So basically, she's kind of dead set on trying to find Ludendorff, who she believes Ares is Ludendorff, basically, um, with a good reason. She thinks because he's the one who's trying to stop the armistice and trying to get the war started again. And there are scenes with Ludendorff and Doctor Poison, which she gives him this sort of these pills, or I wouldn't say pills, but it's some sort of concoction that he inhales, and it's blue, and like his eyes turn black and like his cheeks turn blue, and so at first glance you think he's Ares. The audience also I thought he was Ares too. I thought maybe he was weak and she was giving him this extra stuff, this extra little juice to kind of help him gain his strength back, and kind of he was helping her get her formulas together. I was kind of half right on it. So we're gonna get into like who Ares is and stuff like that right now. So basically, Ludendorff is an Ares, which this kind of ties in with my problem with the movie in the third act. The drug is never explained. The super drug is never explained. Because he's not Ares, it's never explained like what the purpose of it was, other than to give him strength. Like, I guess, and it's not a plot hole per se because it doesn't really affect the plot at all. Like you don't miss it. Like, it wasn't until I was thinking later it could, because it's basically a plot twist that I think his name is David Thewlis's character, Sir Patrick. He's Ares basically. So I thought like, after that misdirection, like you kind of like, you're not really thinking about it, but later on I was thinking about it, and it's kind of explained that Ares was kind of influencing Dr. Poison and helping her get the formula together and giving her inspiration, which is kind of clever with how they do it. They kind of explain that Ares is kind of like influencing people behind the scenes, and kind of like almost like an apparition, kind of like a ghost sort of thing, which that to me wasn't great. I almost wish I almost wish they would have had Ludendorff be Ares, because it makes more sense that way to me as a fan of the comics. But this is where I kind of have a problem with the movie, and this is why it gets 4 stars out of 5. Is like, the third act problems are pretty apparent as far as like, the fight is fine. Like, there is a fight, and there's kind of like a psychological battle before the actual like knockdown, drag out kind of showdown. So that's all well and good, but it makes more sense for Ludendorff to be Ares, because he's at the head of the war. He wants the war to keep going. You know what I mean? Like, he has every reason in the world to keep it going, because that's how Ares gets power, is through war and death. And it made more sense for him to be Ares in the end, even now as I talk about it. And and like Sir Patrick, he kind of wasn't. I think his name is Sir Patrick. He wasn't trying. Yeah, Sir Patrick. Okay, I just looked on IMDb. He wasn't like, he tried to stop Steve Trevor from like going after the base of the poison, but he didn't try that hard. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't exactly trying to stop him. Now, I don't know if he was doing that to kind of flush Diana out or whatever. Like, again, my biggest problems are with this third act. Like, it's not bad by any means. It's not terrible, but it's just not as good as the first 2 acts. Like, the first 2 acts were just way better. But I think Ludendorff works better as Ares. So when she has that little, and you'll see in one of the clips online that she has a little fight with him, and he's super powered. I guess whatever the stuff Dr. Poison gives him is to give him superpowers, and I guess Ares might have influenced her to give him some sort of strength pills to make him stronger. I don't know. Like, it's just that to me is like the weakest part of the movie, is like they kind of explain Ares very well, but it's just like, and then the look of Ares, like I know you guys, you can look at my channel. Um, there's the Build-A-Figure that Mattel made of Ares, and like he does not look like that at all. Like, which was kind of shocking to me. He didn't look like that at all, and actually, I don't like the look of him in the movie. That too. He kind of makes his armor out of like tanks and stuff that are around. That he just kind of like he kind of magnetically brings him to himself, kind of like Magneto. But so he's wearing kind of like tank armor, you know what I mean? And it doesn't look great. It like the armor that was in the Build-A-Figure, that looks awesome. Like if he would have ended up looking like hulking out and turned it into that, like that would have been cool. But so I mean, I guess it works in the sense of like you have an explanation as far as like where his armor comes from and stuff like that. But and another thing is the fight goes on kind of long, and it's like you're just kind of like, okay, is this the end? Is this the end? Like you just like you don't know where the end is, but it's not horrible. I will say that it's not horrible. It was just kind of disappointing. Like I think the word for it would be disappointing. I kind of wish Ares had looked a little more like his original character, but like you kind of can't hold it against the movie for looks of characters and stuff like that. I don't know. I feel kind of bad. Like if I had this kind of pumped up, well, I didn't really have a pumped up view in my head. Like I had that Build-A-Figure that looked really sick. It looked really awesome, and like his armor looked really great and stuff like that. And it got me all pumped up because like Ares is a badass character. But I don't know. You'll see it when you see the movie. Like, it's an interesting way to deal with it. I will say that it's interesting and it's not terrible, but it's just a little disappointing for me. That's just for me. Everyone else could probably love it and be fine with it, but it could just be my hang up. But the way she finds her true power after she takes a beating, and then what happens is she goes to use the God Killer sword on him, and he just kind of like it disintegrates and he just kind of swats it away. And at that point, you're just like, okay, like what the hell, you know what I mean? Like I thought that was the instrument that killed Ares, and it turns out Wonder Woman is the God Killer, which could have interesting implications for the DC Cinematic Universe going forward. It could be that she's the only one who could kill Darkseid, or maybe that they could use it as like she tries to kill Darkseid and she's not effective because he's from Apokolips and he's a new god, so maybe her power doesn't work that way on new gods. It's going to be interesting how they do that, because like I kind of feel like the movie would be over in 5 seconds then if she was like a true killer of all gods, and it was even Darkseid. But it's interesting like how what it could also mean if what I kind of hope they don't do in Justice League is make Superman kind of a minion of Darkseid, and then she has to fight him and stuff like that to kind of wake him up. I think people are kind of sick of seeing what they consider to be the dark Superman. You know what I mean? Like he's not really dark in my opinion. I think what they might do, I'm going into Justice League territory. I can't even believe I'm doing that. But what I think they might do is they might have him be reborn as the Superman and love, basically, which would be cool too. Have a little bit brighter of a Superman, and you have a juxtaposition and a reason for it. So that would be fine. It would make narrative sense. But her being the God Killer, I mean, it's interesting because I want to see where it goes, and even in a sequel, I will want to see where it goes, where they go with that. Considering they also they say all the other gods, the other Greek gods are dead, and I know in the comics, like most of the time, that they are actually still alive, and they can be aiding her and stuff like that. So I mean, I want to see where they go with the sequel because it'd be interesting. But anyway, so she finds her true power by she realizes that she loves Steve Trevor and he loved her back, and it's kind of interesting. Like in the middle of the fight she's having with Ares, he comes up to her, and he has a watch from his father that is explained earlier when they're at Themyscira about what it means, and she's kind of curious about why you would need a watch, and he kind of explains to her what it is, and it was more like it was from his father, and it meant a lot to him, and it said it gave him a purpose in life, it was his purpose. He kind of tied his purpose to that watch, which was very nice. And so he basically she can't hear, and she's kind of disoriented. He comes up to her and says, "Look, I gotta go." He hands her the watch. Says, I gotta stop this thing." And basically, it's like a plane full of like the poison that they're trying to like basically say they're gonna like use to kill millions of people in London, basically. So he's gonna do his duty and like basically take it out. So at the time, she can't hear what he's saying, and basically basically Ares beats her, right? And he like has her tied down in some steel beams in the ground, and she can see Steve Trevor up in the sky. She can see the plane that he's on, and they kind of have. There's this moment where he's up in the plane, he's looking down, and she's watching. And when the moment when he basically goes like he has all this like explosive back there. He uses his gun to shoot it, and you don't see anything happen, but you see the plane explode, and she basically lets out this scream of anguish, basically, because like right before she sees him die, she realizes he said, "I love you, Diana." So that's when she realizes her true power, which is actually a very nice kind of end to their relationship, which is kind of a bummer because like they have really good chemistry, and like I would love to see Steve Trevor in modern day, like. But they could get that done easily because they have the Flash, right? They can just go back in time with the Flash and get him, go back before he blows himself up, and then bring him to the modern day. I doubt they will do that though. But yeah, so that's when she realizes her true power, and then she just goes back and obliterates Ares and just destroys him basically. Yeah. So and that's basically the end of the movie, and and then they go back basically to London, and there's like a big, parade because the war's over and stuff like that. And at that point, she seems kind of somber and kind of distant, and I think that's why she's kind of like that now. I think she kind of lost her tie to humanity, basically after Steve Trevor died, and this is kind of why she withdrew from mankind, is because she also realized, and Steve Trevor kind of explains this to her, like, look. Like, it's not just Ares causing the war. It's men, too. It's like, it's all of us. Like, it's our problems, too. Like, he's kind of feeding off on our problems and our energy. And she kind of realizes, like, maybe mankind's a problem, too. So, yeah. It ends kind of on a somber note, which is fine. Which, I don't know what you would expect it to end on, because especially with a character death like that. But, so and then at the end of the movie, she basically gets his watch back. She gets basically Bruce Wayne, which is very cool because Wayne Tip gives her her photo, her original photo that was in Batman v Superman. He gets her original photo of her team back, and then also Steve Trevor's watch, which was great. And I don't know if she had that already, or maybe she had that already. She might have had that already, but I know she got the picture back from Bruce Wayne. And then so the movie ends where she kind of explains her role in the world, that she's going to stop things and blah, blah, blah. So she goes to the top of some building in London, and she kind of just jumps off and then kind of flies into the camera. Now, that was a bummer for me the way it ended, because like they could have used that opportunity to kind of set up Justice League, since they're the two who I've read in some of the articles, of Setvids and stuff. They're the two who are bringing the team together. Could have had a nice moment there between Wonder Woman and Batman, talking about putting together the Justice League. They should have did that. They didn't. Now and I don't know if this is just because they didn't want a mid credits or post credits scene coming out. There was nothing at the mid credits. There's nothing at the post credits. So we waited. So I kind of feel like that was another reason it kind of ended on a little bit of a bummer to me, because like I think they could have used that for a narrative kind of jumping point for Justice League for people. And that would have been a nice tease, because it's always great to see Batman, and it's always great to see our heroes together. So that was kind of a bit of so that was a bit of a disappointment. So, other than that, like I just, other than those few kind of little, what I consider to be disappointments that are kind of me being a fan and kind of, a fan of the comics, like, those are things that like I don't really hold against the movie because those are kind of my things that I bring into it, like as far as like what I want from Aries. So, but I think the twist was well done. I didn't see it coming. Like I did not see it coming. So it was a decent twist because I mean, there's a lot of good decent twists. The fact that the God Killer sword was not what it was, and the fact that um, Ludendorff was not Ares. It was some decent twists in there, some pretty good, and they're not done terribly either. So, um, and again, guys, I really like the movie. It's four stars out of 5 for me. I definitely think you should check it out. And anyways, I hope you enjoyed this review. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far in, and again, thanks for listening and watching, and have a great day.